don't you start a little bit with the genesis of this idea? Why are we doing this with this theme Thursday?
Well, I think here's the reason why we're doing this. These themes are really kind of at the core of this language. We often say this is a strengths-based language, and we really want people to kind of understand the vocabulary. And and to be honest with you, it's kind of a challenging thing. There's not just 3 or 4 different themes. There's 34 different themes, and so we just want to help people get some real clarity around each theme. That's why we're just going to focus on one each time, so that we really can, one by one, kind of build some clarity around these themes. It's a little bit like a chef who really doesn't understand all of the different ingredients that go into a dish. If they don't understand what this ingredient brings, they're probably not going to be as good a chef as they can be. So we really want everybody to understand all 34 ingredients and the value that they bring. So that's basically why we're doing it. The recurring pattern of activator is that these are people that just have this internal sense of urgency. And it's this internal sense of urgency, this desire to get started, that pushes them, and it really pushes other people to act. I just kind of realized, I think this is the hate to wait theme. These people really hate to wait. They really want to get started. Let's do something now. So it's this urgency that you feel. And I mentioned this. I'm married to an activator. We've been married for 40+ years, and I often tell people I have done a lot more things in my life because I've been married to. To tell you the truth, I might not even be at Gallup if it were not for her. Today's theme is a theme that it's deliberative. Last week we did activator. We talked about the movers and the shakers, the people who are anxious to get started, people who have got this urgency, this need for speed. And today we're going to slow things down a little bit. And it's interesting to me. I think we live in a world that this is just my opinion. I don't have any data about this, but my observation is that we live in a world that appreciates speed more than slowing things down. Acceleration, it seems to be more important and valuable than deceleration. But what we know is that some people have been successful because they really have been able to know how to slow things down. Self-assurance is what I would call one of the ego themes, and it's really about ego that's developed more internally. If I had to kind of give a brief description of self-assurance, here's what I'm saying. This is an internal confidence to try even though external uncertainty exists. And it really is, when people have this theme, they have this trust in their own abilities and instincts. It's the stuff that's inside of them. They're aware of it, they rely on it, they're confident in it. So it's what's inside of them is really the key part to this self-assurance.
Command is a pretty rare theme. In fact, it is the most rare theme of all 34. Only 5% of our database have command in their top 5, and that's something people always ask me why that is, and maybe that's something Al can explain later on. But we'll try to think about command, what it looks like in its raw form, what it looks like in its mature form. I think command obviously is a theme about influencing. And there's lots of different kinds of influence. I think it is especially helpful in situations where there may be some resistance, where there may be some opposition. This doesn't mean anti, but just it's about persuading sometimes. It's getting people to go along with you and pushing people to do that.
Okay, let's dive into relator, kind of the overview of it. Relators, I think at the core of it is the capability of building close, authentic, and sustainable relationships that foster trust. And I guess I can say this because relator is one of my signature themes as well. We're kind of slow sometimes, and maybe it depends what other themes you have, but it takes us some time to do that.
I guess if I had to kind of just briefly define woo, it's when people have this theme, they can quickly and comfortably build multiple social relationships and exert broad social influence. And so some kind of words that come to mind when I think about woo are social initiative. It's really about starting relationships. These are people who are really good at getting the ball rolling socially, like saying hello and kind of reaching out. For some people, it's about social speed. They can do this pretty quickly. I think it's also a little bit about social courage. Those people who have less woo or are a bit feel socially inhibited maybe. But people with woo, they have a kind of a social adventure about them. I really think individualization is it's a theme about people. It's in the relationship building theme, and if I were to kind of summarize and kind of shorten the definition, I think it really is a theme that gives people a clear perception about human uniqueness, and it's that perception that really can lead to helping a person treat and approach a person in a relevant way. If I had to kind of shrink the definition of harmony, and sometimes I think that's a valuable thing to do, is to kind of boil it down. Here's how I describe it. Harmony is a person who has harmony promotes collaboration by managing conflict and maintaining practicality. And if I would boil it down even further, I would say it's this. It's getting along with people so we can get stuff done. I am convinced that a lot of people with harmony, even though we call this a relationship theme, it many times has a strong performance orientation. And it's really kind of this tension that people with harmony, I think, live with. A ranger is obviously, it's an executing theme. It's about, I think one of the words that I think describes a ranger is productivity. It's about getting something done. And so in that way, it's kind of a like achiever. But it's different in that it's not just about getting things done by individual effort. It's getting things done by orchestrating and coordinating and facilitating to some degree the work of others. I think it's a collaborative kind of productivity that a ranger often kind of executes. If I were to kind of up with a brief definition of includer, it would be this. I think people who possess the includer theme they quickly notice exclusion that can hurt people or hinder performance, and they seek to facilitate their involvement. And in other words, they're kind of aware of barriers or boundaries to belonging. They really try to bring people in. If I were to kind of give a brief definition of maximizer, I would describe it as a strong orientation towards and commitment to excellence that leads to quality outcomes. It's really people who have a kind of a nose for quality and also a strong desire for quality. And people with restorative really are comfortable with problems. That's one part of it. There is a more of a comfort. I don't think problems are ever easy, but I think for a restorative person there might be a little more ease with problems. I think another part of this theme is that they often have insight into problems, maybe what's causing problems, kind of diagnostic kind of expertise. And then the last part of it is they are driven towards solutions. So, I mean, that's why we find this theme in the executing domain. There is a drive to solve problems. And sometimes things get done better or faster because a problem gets solved. And so I think that's at the core. Positivity is a theme that really has to do with what I would say emotional influence. You may recall that we've talked about woo and we've talked about communication. I think those three themes often track together, and woo is about people who have this kind of natural social influence. People with communication are people who have this natural verbal influence, and I think positivity brings people who are emotionally influential, and they do this by their natural optimism and enthusiasm, and that natural optimism and enthusiasm stimulate the energy and lifts the hopes of. These really are people who know how to make other people feel good. They're people who know how to lift the spirits and lighten the loads of other people, and they just really have an overall positive effect on the emotional environment of a situation, of a team, a family, an organization. Really, communication is really about people who have this natural ability for verbal expression that brings conceptual clarity and social connections. So it's both a social theme, but I think it also adds to understanding. In fact, one of the things that I really have sensed that people with communication really value is they value being understood. They want people to get what it is that they're saying. And the way that they do that, I think sometimes it certainly could be about people who are very good at presentations, about speaking, but I think it's also about, it's not just monologue, it's also dialogue. It's about the conversation. It's the give and take. It's both talking and listening. Obviously, intellection is one of those themes that's in the strategic thinking or the critical thinking domain, and it's something that goes on in people's heads. And if I were to kind of give a short definition, here's how I would describe it. It's a solitary or philosophical contemplation that deepens wisdom and understanding. It's really about people who like to think deeply about themes, and I find many times that these are people who sometimes need more time and more space in order to do that. And by space, I mean they might think best when they're alone, when it's quiet, when the door is shut, when the phone is turned off. They just need some time and space to think, but they really get clarity. I'm going to kind of jump into our theme overture, our theme du jour here, the learner, and so I'll just begin with just a short description as I try to kind of boil down the essence of what this theme is. I really think learners have a natural curiosity and enjoyment of learning experience that leads to ever-evolving paradigms and ever-expanding perspectives.
The definition that I have if I kind of pull it all together and try to summarize it in a short definition, here's how I would put it. Input is an awareness and an acquisition of resources that have utility that can lead to productive resourcefulness. I think people who have input really see the value in stuff, and stuff can be all over the place in terms of what it is. It's obviously about information for many people. How people kind of consume that information can vary, I think, from person to person. I think traditionally, maybe a number of years ago, people with input would have been primarily about books, but I think that has expanded with the access to information that we have in the internet. So it's websites, it's apps. I think it can also be about tools.
Let me just kind of start with this theme overture, my kind of spin on what I have kind of seen clinically in connectedness, and I think this may be one of the themes that has a kind of broadness to it that's hard to really kind of put in a box, and I certainly don't want to do that, but it has lots of different factors. How I have kind of tried to summarize in just a brief statement the essence of connectedness is this: it's a global spiritual perspective that produces an integrated holistic practice. That's a pretty short summary, and I'm not sure you can actually summarize connectedness in a small phrase, but that's my shot at that. So let me just kind of get into our theme overture here again and talk about responsibility kind of from a high level, and then we'll kind of get at it in living color as Claire talks to us about it as well. Responsibility is, if I had to kind of define it in a very short sentence, would be it's really people who are serious and conscientious about keeping commitments to others and doing things right. People who have discipline as one of their signature themes are people who are often very good at what I would say managing limited personal resources by creating a plan and following it. These are people who bring order to chaos, and it's really about personal efficiency. People who get things done by creating structure and order to kind of support what it is that they do. And so it's in the executing domain. That's where it falls. It really helps. It's one of the things that helps people accomplish things, to be productive. So we're going to talk a little bit about adaptability as the theme of the day here, and this is a theme that really is comfortable and responsive in changing situations and environments. I think one of the things that distinguishes people is how they relate to variance and variety, and the adaptable person is someone who's more on the side of, I kind of like variance. I kind of like variety. Belief is a theme that I think has a lot to do with values. It's actually a part of what I often call a values package, which includes a theme like responsibility and connectedness. All three of those things have some things in common, but specifically, I believe belief is about people who are naturally guided and driven by important causes, purposes, or values. Let's kind of jump into the theme overture as talking about empathy, and empathy is one of those themes that I think is related to emotions and feelings. And obviously we talk about talent is about a natural pattern of how people think, act, and feel. Feelings are part of what talent is, and this particular theme, I think, really begins with the emotional attention to the emotional state of others. It's people who have an awareness or a sensitivity to that. I think it also can be for people not just the ability to be in tune with how others are feeling, but maybe their own feelings, and to some degree have an ability to kind of express that emotion. Context is a thinking theme. It's in people's head. It explains how they gather and process information. And obviously, it's one of the reasons that people are smart, is context. And
I think part of it is I love being a coach. I've spent the last 14 years of my life coaching people, and it energizes me. I can be on the phone with 7 or 8 people during the day, and at the end of the day, I'm not drained. I'm kind of energized, and I think that's what happens when you get to a role that really fits who you are. And so I certainly felt like I've done that. I think I realized that I'm not going to be around forever here, and so I certainly am interested in kind of. I really believe in the impact that this strengths-based approach to coaching can have. Yeah. And I want to make sure that there are more people out there who are doing this the right way. And and I don't know if there's any better audience, to tell you the truth, than people who are coaches. I love to teach coaches. I love to coach coaches because they're people, I think they're kind of like me. They want to help people. So these are people who are open to learning, to doing what's necessary to help other people grow. So I really, and I'm not just saying this, I love being around other coaches. It inspires me, and so if I can help create a few more strengths coaches around the world, that's really the kind of legacy that I'd like to leave.